So there was like no doubt in
Oh,
my mind, like there's a shooter. Do you know what I mean? Like that was like, okay, this is what's happening. So I was very worried about causing panic because I thought, oh, if I point it out, everyone will run and they'll run over my
yeah.
kids. So, I turned to them, I had a big smile on my face, and I was like, my group, with me, my group. And I pulled them all the way to the side because there's many exits that are guarded.
Yeah.
So I pulled them away from the crowd, away from the group, thinking, oh my gosh, this crowd's going to stampede any minute. And I'm like, quickly with me. And I'm walking fast towards the guard. And as I'm getting close to the guard, I'm mouthing to him, there is a shooter. There is a shooter.
Namaste, Nikki. Welcome to the
Namaste.
tourism story. And I hope you are doing well.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be here.
Please tell us about you, from where you are, and how do you see yourself? How do you identify yourself?
I'm in New York right
Yeah.
now, from New York, and I identify myself as a New Yorker. Professionally, I like to think of myself as a tour guide advocate, which I kind of fell into. I have a tour guiding background. I'm now on the operations side, but a lot of my work and a lot of the writing that I do is about trying to push to give tour guides a bigger voice in the larger travel industry, which I don't feel they have.
Yeah, that's right. I think you are also working on some guide alliance or something like that.
Yeah, my quarantine project was to work on I got together with a few other tour operators and we built
Yeah,
what's called the Global Guide Alliance. So it's still
yeah,
under construction. The website's live, and we hope that it can kind of just be a space like unaffiliated with licenses or anything like that, where guides around the world can just come and learn and talk to each other and share tips. Because I also feel tour guides, we don't do that enough, like we're all in the
yeah.
same business, but we work very solo.
So what is in it for the guides? I mean, a guide, young guide who is just starting, or an experienced guide, 10, 20 years of experience. So what is in it for them? What do you think they are gonna get out of it?
So I honestly think we are going to run more like professional trainings through it.
Yeah,
All three of us are guide trainers, and one is a docent trainer, and each of us have our own things, and we know tons of guide trainers. But beyond that, I honestly really just hope to have this like forum where we can kind of post very simple, basic things like tips for giving a tour in really hot weather, which for a
yeah,
new guide is really important information. Like that's the stuff you learn once you're out in the field working. But for a more experienced tour guide, it's the things that you're doing, but you forget exactly what you're doing, right? Because you're doing it
yeah.
natural. So I think that information is actually also really important as refreshers, and just to kind of remember,
And
oh yeah, this is what I'm doing, and to be more conscious of it.
and also to do tours in the rain and
Exactly. Like
maybe
the
some
list can go on and
calamity.
on, but those kind, what to do
Yeah,
with an unhappy customer, or what to do with like,
yeah.
there's a couple fighting on your tour, like all the stuff that we
Agree.
all deal with, because someone's going to have an interesting way to handle it, which might or might not work for you, right? Each guide, each
Yeah.
country is so different.
Awesome. That's great. So I'll come back to you. I'll come back to your birthplace. I think it's Queens.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell us about it? Where were you
Queens.
born?
Oh,
And yeah,
oh my. So Queens is the better borough in New York City. I know
yeah,
people, all think Brooklyn is super cool. Queens is amazing. It's actually the most ethnically diverse county in the entire United States. So we have almost 200 languages spoken in Queens.
wow.
So, for me, it's actually very strange to be in homogenous places where everyone looks the same. That's like very
Yeah,
shocking to me, because I walk down the street to get groceries, and I hear 10 different languages. I see 10 different religious wear, like 10 different skin colors, which I love. So I'm from here originally. I'm the fourth generation in my house.
yeah,
But I like to think I have a better appreciation of New York City than my family, because we moved. When I was very young, we moved to 2 other states with my dad's job. And, we would come back here for summers and holidays. But I think as much as I hated it, I came back to the city as soon as I started college.
Yeah.
But I see my cousins and they don't appreciate the city. And I know what it's like to live outside of the city. So I think I really have this special appreciation and love for New York that I don't think I would have had I not moved away. So I am grateful in the long run for the experience.
So where did you study? How was your school and college life? Was it
So
in New York?
it was in New York, in Greenwich
Okay.
Village, which is the most amazing neighborhood in New York City. And it has this amazing, like, hippie bohemian culture. It's beautiful. It's still my favorite neighborhood. I went to a very modern school. It's called the New School. And I
Wow.
went to their undergraduate program. And it's
Yeah.
a hippie school, and it's changed a little bit since I went to college all those years ago. It's a little bigger now, but it was very small. It was 10 people in a classroom, and
Yeah.
they used this method where everything was debate. So the the professor was not there to teach. They were there to moderate the conversation.
That's
So it
great.
encouraged a lot of debate, and you had all these people who just had these really specific interests, and they would debate you down. They'd be yelling and crying in the class. Like, it was just this very intense, no tests. Everything was like
Wow.
written papers. You would study whatever you wanted, no required classes. So for someone who
Yeah.
didn't know what they wanted to do after college, it was kind of amazing because it taught me how to learn and how to be curious and how
Wow.
to ask questions and how to find an opinion and be passionate about things. I loved it. It's not for everyone,
Yeah.
but I really loved it. So
Yeah.
I think on my certificate, it says culture and media, but I took
Wow.
everything. I took a class on subway art. So we'd walk around through the subway stations and talk about art pieces in the subway. I took a sound class and we studied how sound worked and how people perceive sound. I took dream interpretation. I took a class on Caribbean religions. I took everything.
Wow. That's really interesting. I mean, I think this all this has helped you in making a better guide. What do you have to say on this?
Yeah,
You're
totally.
being born in New York, and then you have studied all these things. I mean, random stuff, but I think it's very much related to tourism and being a tour guide. So, what
Yeah,
do you have
it
to say on it?
it definitely built, I think, like, my spark for being a tour guide came out of being annoyed at tourists in New York City. Like, it was a very
Yeah,
selfish motive. I was like, I'm gonna fix this. Like, I'll take these people out and I'll tell them, don't do that. But I do think my education and growing up in Queens gave me a foundation of understanding there were many different cultures and many different ways of
yeah,
doing things. And I think that helped as a tour guide for me to interpret things for other people, because I would understand that their day to day is very different from mine. And so I think I
yeah.
was probably better to interpret that.
Wow. So, I think you came in contact with tour guiding in college, or was it your grandfather who was the first? What was the
Yeah,
first
you did your
time you?
homework.
Yeah, I have to.
Yeah.
So, what was the first time you came in contact with tour guiding?
Yeah, my grandfather, for a very long time, he's an amazing man. He's 93. He lives next door.
Wow.
Lived in New York City all his life. He's amazing stories. He was a volunteer tour guide for an amazing organization called Big Apple Greeters. It's a nonprofit in New York City, and they are basically a network of retirees, so older New Yorkers who, for fun, would take tourists out. And it was very unofficial. Like, they weren't tour guides, they were like hosts. And it wasn't like a tour, it was a visit, right? They didn't have licenses or anything like that. But my grandfather would just take people out and he'd do his thing. He'd show them around, he'd give them facts. And I got to see he was taking out people from all over the world because, it's a free program. So way more
Yeah.
people would sign up than you could actually take. So my grandfather would get to choose, oh, I want someone from Italy, I want someone from Germany. So again, very selfishly, I wanted to study abroad in Italy in college. So I was taking Italian and I thought, oh, I can volunteer on weekends and take out Italians and practice my Italian. totally selfishly, no interest in showing people around, but
Yeah.
I did it and I liked it. And when I graduated, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And someone kind of said, hey, you're doing these tours. Like, this is actually a job. You could give tours for people. And that's literally, I was like, okay, I'll do this until I figure out what I want to do. 10 years
Yeah.
later, still in this world.
Still doing it. So, do you remember your first tour? How was your first tour, and what were your thoughts when you
Oh,
were on your first tour?
yeah. So I won't tell you the company because this is an embarrassing story.
No, no, yeah,
So I was very lucky. I was very, very lucky. Um, there was an author, a New York City based author who wrote books about New York City and Italy. My mom was a
okay,
huge fan. So I had just graduated and she was like, you should write to this author and tell her you could do tours in New York City based on her books. I'm thinking, okay, mom, like they're not going to respond, but it just so
yeah,
happened that author, unbeknownst to me, had just had her friend start a tour company for her books. So right time, right place, I sent an email. So having zero experience giving official tours, having zero experience building tours, they hired me to create tours. So, I don't remember the exact first one, but I just remember
yeah.
those first few, like, ugh, I knew nothing. Like, I knew absolutely nothing. I would write everything down on index cards, all the facts and numbers,
Wow.
and I would carry it around with me. It's awful, awful. But I was very lucky because all that the demographic of her fans were my mother's age. And I was very young at the time. I was right out of college. So they were
Yeah.
so wonderful and kind to me. They didn't care about the facts. They were just thrilled to be on the tour and they all mothered me. So yeah, I'm sure those first few tours, all my facts were incorrect because I was just Googling things.
Wow. So, and how do you evolve then over the time? I mean, what were your learnings from your first tour, and what changes did you make right after the first tour?
Yeah, after the first tour, I learned to let go of facts. I think I
Yeah.
had in my head that, to be a tour guide, you have to give all these facts and show how much you know. But
Yeah.
then I quickly learned after those first few tours, people don't always care about facts. They value facts, right? They see value in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But if you tell stories, they're just as happy. So I stopped giving facts and being stressed about remembering the exact date something happened because I realized I didn't need that in my tour. That was like the
Yeah.
biggest evolution, I think, that made my life easier.
Easier. Yeah. And you get rid of your cards.
Eventually, I held on to those for a while. I still have some of them just from nostalgia, like my original packs of cards.
Wow. You should share with us those things. It's
I
gonna
don't know
be
where they
fun.
are, and I'm sure they're all incorrect.
No, no, it's gonna be fun seeing your old cards and how you started. So, with continuation with this, tell me about your most challenging tour you ever had.
Oh, yeah. So
Oh, it's
people
gonna
always
be
ask tour guides like the funniest thing or the craziest thing that ever happened, and mine is not a funny story. It was horrible. Um, I used to give a lot of student tours. That's
yeah,
kind of bread and butter for New York City guides. So school trips and chorus trips. And it was more like tour leading. You'd get them all on the bus, you'd take them to the
yeah,
restaurant, you'd get them all on the bus, you'd take them to the museum. So one of the common things to do with these big groups is take them on the Staten Island ferry, which is a commuter ferry. It goes from Manhattan to Staten Island and
yeah,
it's free. And it happens to go past the Statue of Liberty. So it's an amazing free
yeah,
way to see the Statue of Liberty, get a boat ride. So how the ferry works is you get everyone on, and logistically as a tour guide, you have to keep your group together, make sure everyone gets on, make sure everyone knows when to get off. Because the boat gets to Staten Island, you have to get off the boat, you have to walk through the ferry terminal, and then you get back on the boat, and then it comes back. That's like how it works. So we're on the boat. I have very young children. I have a group of 40 elementary school students, so they're like 7 and 8.
oh,
Um,
yeah,
and we get to the terminal, and the terminal in Staten Island is all glass. So you can kind of see when you come out through the doors off the ferry, you can see the waiting room. You just have to go around to come back in for safety precautions. And it's, you know, it's a public terminal. So there's lots of, in New York City, you have like different types of police guard, right?
Yeah.
So unbeknownst to me, that day, they were filming a police training video.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they did not announce that on the boat either. But, you know, this is a boat of tourists. So they were filming a video that day of what to do if a shooter opens fire in the public terminal, right? So I get off the boat and all I see is a man in a black hoodie with a machine gun doing this and people running, right? And I can't hear anything because it's glass, but you can't hear. And, you know, there's a crowd, everyone's getting off the ferry, they're all being directed. So again, they're all tourists. So I guess it didn't alarm anyone, but for me, this is post 9/11. So there was like no doubt in my mind, like there's a shooter. Do you know what I mean? Like that was like, okay, this is what's happening. So I was very worried about causing panic because I thought, oh, if I point it out, everyone will run and they'll run over my kids. So, you know, I turned to them, I had a big smile on my face. And I was like, my group with me, my group. And I pulled them all the way to the side because there's many exits that are guarded. So I pulled them away from the crowd, away from the group, thinking, oh my gosh, this crowd's going to stampede any minute. And I'm walking, I'm like, quickly with me. And I'm walking fast towards the guard. And as I'm getting close to the guard, I'm mouthing to him, you know, there is a shooter, you know, getting close. And I get up to him, and typical New York faction, like he could care. He's like, oh no, they're shooting a video in there. I was like, oh my gosh, why wasn't that announced, you know? So I turned to my group and I kind of said, like, did anyone see what's going on in there? And some of them were like, yeah, it looks like something's going on. I was like, well, they're shooting a video, just so you know. You know, so I prepared them. And then we walked through the terminal, got on the boat. You know, I said, okay, we'll meet at this time. Then I went into the bathroom and just had a panic attack. You know, I just sat there, I was like, oh, like it was crazy. It was so crazy.
Yeah, thank God they were shooting the video, not the people. Otherwise, we could not have seen each other.
Maybe not. Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah. Wow. So that was amazing. And is there any kind of tour you want to change it? Anything that happened on your tour and you want to change it? Any situation with any guest?
I mean, nothing, you know, you have annoying guests here and then. But I really think like I've been very lucky that I've never had anything that was horrible, right? Or someone that really pushed me past the edge, or someone that was bullying someone else and I felt I needed to address. I do later on in my tour guiding career, I did take a much bigger responsibility in like really training tourists to be better to my city. And I do wish I had done that a little more at the beginning. I realized that responsibility very late on. But yeah, there's nothing like horrific that I would change.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's something positive from the tourist side.
Yeah,
And
yes, I was lucky.
From your experience side as well. Yeah. From experience side as well. So, do you take pride in taking tours? How do you feel about it?
When I take tours as a guest, or when I take people?
You take people on a tour.
Yeah, I guess I feel proud because at the end of the day, you know, New Yorkers, like, we're very snobby. So we're like, well, of course you're here to see my city, which is the greatest in the world. So I think that's there, of course. But like I said, I think more than anything, I feel proud to protect my city from tourism. And I feel proud that I take that seriously. And I hope that I affect people for the better, so that when they're gone from me for my 3-hour tour, they are still remembering the things I taught them, as simple as don't stop in the middle of the sidewalk.
Yeah,
do you know what I
that's
mean?
true. And
the greatest compliment I ever got, and again, at the beginning, these are mistakes that I made, like not being conscious of locals. And I, for the tours for the author, I didn't know any better. I just brought people to local shops, because that's where I would go, and
Yeah.
that's what's mentioned in the book. And then I realized later, okay, you need to be careful about how you do that, because the locals would get annoyed. You know, I'd walk in with a group of 10 people. But the biggest compliment I ever got was when a New Yorker, and it happened several times, where they would thank me for giving certain information to the guests. Like, for example, I used to do a tour of au pairs. It's like babysitters that would come to the United States from internationally. And I would take them to a local neighborhood, to Greenwich Village, in fact. But I would take them to a park, you know, so they couldn't do too much damage and get in the way. And I would make a really big deal before I set them free. Because again, it was a group of 40 people. I'd say, look, this is a local neighborhood. So you need to blend in. Like, I can't be the one who dumped 40 tourists in Washington Square Park. So they get excited, because they were all young girls. So they take it really seriously. So I'd run through the whole spiel, like, okay, in New York, this sidewalk is our street. You know, imagine you're back home, you're in your car, you stop your car, you get out of your car and you take a picture, right? That would be crazy. Don't do it on the sidewalk. And, you know, I'd say, okay, walking, do not walk 4 people abreast, linked arms, strolling down the sidewalk. Do not do that, right? And I'd kind of leave them with the impression of, okay, remember, if nothing else, you are here on vacation. I'm so happy. We're so happy you're here. We want you to enjoy your city. Everyone else you see is trying to go to work, trying to go home, right? Trying to get about their day. Just to plant those things. And every once in a while, someone local would overhear me giving this speech. And when I'd walk away, they'd be like, thank you. Thank you. And that was the biggest compliment, that I wanted locals to see that you can make the effort to make tourists behave. You know, like, they don't have to be a bad thing. They just don't know any better. And it's our responsibility, I believe, to teach them better.
I think earlier I had that impression that in New York, the tourists will come out of their buses and point cameras in every direction and will open their maps out, and then they'll be looking for the way. And people will be hitting them and abusing them to get away. I think that's what impression I had. Yeah.
It is 100% true. And I would always warn them that too. I would say, you know, if someone moves you out of their way, do not be offended. You were just in the way, but now they're moving you out of the way. Yeah.
Yeah. They're going to work. It's just us who are disturbing them. Even as a tour guide, I think it's us who are disturbing them. I think it's our responsibility to let them go to their work while doing our work.
100%. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you were talking about something positive. Tell me any negative review you got from your guest.
Negative review. I don't know that I've ever got a negative review. No, I'm sure I have, not that I noticed. I mean, I've had unhappy guests for different circumstances. But in a lot of those, I was very lucky to have managers at the time who were very empowering and saying, you have the power to do whatever you need to fix it on the ground. You know, so if someone was unhappy, I could like buy them an extra whatever tasting, or I could change the tour. So I always felt like I could solve the problem. I was always empowered to do that, which is very lucky. That's not always the case at tour companies. I just think I was always able to address it, even if there was like because it's always expectations, right? Like, I guess the classic unhappy customer for my tours in New York City, I gave walking tours a lot, and people would show up for the walking tour and say, where's the bus? And it's like, oh, this is a 3-hour walking tour. Like, this is not the tour for you. So I think it was always like something that right off the bat, we knew, like, this isn't going to work. Let's call the office. Let's get you a refund. You shouldn't come on this tour.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So talking about future, tell me what are your plans and what are you going to do after this pandemic gets over?
I know. Well, I got a job, which was very shocking to me. I started 3 weeks ago. It's a tour operator here in New York City. it was very surprising. So I currently am working. Um, I'm currently,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. And I hope it works out. I hope we are able to employ guides and run tours, but in the back of my mind, I'm kind of prepared for anything, and maybe trying to keep a safe distance mentally. But
Okay.
I'm currently on the operations team. So I'm senior ops manager for Experience First. And we have tours in several cities in the US and in Paris. So right now, I'm working on all the safety stuff, like how to keep guides safe, how to communicate to guides what they need to know, how to prepare guides. Like, look, there's the pandemic going, so we want you to come back to
Yeah.
work. But if you don't want to come
Yeah.
back to work, you don't have to, right? Like, there's just so many things to communicate. So
Yeah.
right now I'm doing that. I'm also working on this Global Guide Alliance and hoping to get that up and running. And I'm still trying to do a lot of writing. When I was jobless, I committed to myself. I want a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday schedule. So one of my tasks I
Wow.
assigned myself was to write a blog post once a week and post
Yeah,
it.
I'm reading them. I'm reading them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
They're
So
great.
so I
Yeah.
still want to keep that up. I don't know that I can commit to once a week, but I still want to do that. So
Yeah.
writing about tour guides and tour guide training, um,
And their experiences.
and their
Yeah.
experiences, and again for the tourism industry. So I talk a lot to guides, but I'm much more interested in talking to tour operators and being that translator in between, right? So tour
Yeah.
operators saying, oh, my guides don't do this or my guides don't do that. And I say, well, have you considered that's because they understand this and they haven't been told this,
Yeah.
So I like that space of being that translator. In the future, I mean, who knows? I'm really struggling with the future of travel, and should we
Oh,
be traveling right now? And
yeah.
is this a good thing to open up tours, but then balancing that with, okay, but these people need work, like our industry needs to survive, we need to pay rent, so how can we do that safely? And also thinking about, okay, but how can we rebuild in a way that's sustainable and equitable, so in a way specifically that is benefiting local communities as opposed to destroying them, like in Venice, like in Barcelona. And then in the
Yeah.
equitable part, like how do we prevent travel from becoming this super exclusive thing, which it already was, really?
Yeah.
And how do we like, I'm so worried about flight tickets being expensive and all these tours being super expensive, but like I think we should instead go the other route. Like, local travel is the thing right now, so let's make this normal. Let's normalize going somewhere in your own town, right? Let's normalize going somewhere nearby that you don't have to pay a lot of money to get to, so more people can participate in travel.
Wow. So I was reading an article from New York, and adding to the same, the article was started with a question, and it was like this: If if traveling ruins the planet or is killing the planet, should we still travel? So what do you have to say about it?
I don't know
The
that.
coral reef is dying, beaches are going down, and all these things are happening. So what do you have to say on it? Should we still travel or stay at home?
I think it's more complicated than
Yeah.
travel or not travel. But I think we were certainly not meant to travel in the volume that we were,
Oh
right? Like,
yes.
we weren't built for it. So I think the solution either has to be we have to change the way we travel so that we can continue to do it and not destroy the
Yeah.
planet, or we need to commit to traveling less.
Oh yes.
Which
More
is hard,
responsibly.
which
Yeah.
is hard to say, like, but there has to be a change. We certainly can't
There has
continue
to be a
what
change.
we
Yeah.
were doing.
Yeah. Because the things we are doing now, filling the planes and then filling the buses and filling the trains, and it is damaging the environment a lot. I mean, it's the climate change is being driven a lot by our industry, and that's a sad part. Yeah.
It is, but it's a responsibility that we have to take on, like, we were very privileged. I was very privileged to travel as much as I did. And I'm trying to come to terms that, okay, maybe that's not going to be my future. I can still travel, but it might not look like jetting around the world, going to amazing places,
Yeah,
and that's okay.
yeah, yeah. That's great. So tell me now, how do you want to retire? How do you want to retire? I
I
mean,
cannot imagine retiring. That is just not my personality.
yeah, I can relate to this because I think what we are doing as a guide or in tourism industry, it is already a retirement. It's fun, and there are some times we can take rest and we can choose when to work. So
Yeah,
I think it's just kind of retirement also.
it is. I mean, and you're missing all the really, 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 really hard work that goes to maintaining that. But I don't know. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
in 10 years from now, or 20 years, I guess I should say, more 30 years. I have a ways to go of working.
yeah,
But when I get to that point where I can step back, I don't know, I like to see myself in a position where I'm behind the scenes and amplifying other people. Um, I like right now being a voice. I really like I said, being an advocate for the guides. I have the privilege to push for things that guides don't. I have the privilege as an American to be in spaces
yeah.
that other people can't, and I want to use that privilege. But I do want to get to a point where I'm then the older generation, and so I'm amplifying the younger voices to make sure we're keeping travel and tourism moving and innovating and adapting.
Wow, that's really great. I mean, that's very positive way to see yourself and to look at yourself being privileged and then giving to others. I think that's a really positive thing. I'm very happy to know that. So now we are going to conclude, and in the conclusion, I want to ask you that is there something that you want to suggest a young guide, a young tourism professional who's just starting his career? There's pandemic. What should they do, and what should they look for tourism in future?
Yeah, that's really hard. And look, it's very different, a place like India where you're going to school forever to get your master's in
Yeah,
tourism and history looks very different than a place like the US where in some cities you do not need a license, right? But I would say for across the board, something that could work for everyone, I would say to know people will travel. Like, I really do believe that. So to not think, up, this is it. I've studied all these years for a career that doesn't exist. Um,
yeah,
but it will be different. So right now, I think actions people can do is work on their guide training. That works for experienced guides and fresh guides. There are things you can work on. We don't think of it in that way, I think. Like, tour guiding is a skill I never practiced at home or thought about or read about. But there you could read up on psychology, on anthropology. And again, maybe you guys already do this in your training, but there's so many
yeah,
areas you can say. Meditation, we were talking about before.
yeah,
Like, that's an amazing skill as a tour guide to have. And the physicality, it's like, I think now is the time to upskill, so you are the best of the best. You're prepared. Get together, talk to other tour guides. If you're brand new, talk to experienced tour guides. Say, what are the things I should know? Get taught those things that you can only learn by experience. For experienced guides, talk to other experienced guides. Form that network. Break this habit that we have of like every person out for themselves and being competitive over
yeah.
jobs. Like,
Pushing each other out there.
yeah, like create a community. Like, spend this time doing that. And then I guess the biggest advice I would have to say is that now I've found during quarantine is an amazing time to network. People are feeling
Yeah,
generous. People are at home. Now's the time to email the VP of Lonely Planet, to email the president of a local tour company you really admire, and just pick their brain, talk to them. What did they think travel is going to look like? What should you do as a guide, to prepare? Just get in their brains and form that relationship. It's an amazing time to do
yeah,
that. And you could test things out even. I have more advice than I thought. Test things out. Like, you want to work on product, build a tour, get friends to go
yeah,
on it, run it, like experiment, like do a
yeah.
market analysis of competitors in your local region. Like, there's so
Yeah,
much you can
there's
do
so
right
much to
now.
do. Yeah, yeah.
So much to
There's so
do.
much to do, and learning from your advice, I started my storytelling course. So please tell us skills which we should do. I have personally started storytelling course, and I have started creative writing course.
Yeah.
So what else should we do?
In terms of skills, yeah, those are the biggest in my mind. Storytelling is so big. I would also say a great skill is researching. I think very often we all read the same book. You know what I mean? The same book about the Statue of Liberty. We all read the same general book about our city. Branch out, find new authors, find modern day authors, young authors, authors of different races and genders, you know, that are harder to find. I think that research is really important of where we source our material and how we keep it fresh, right? So that's a really big thing. Another big skill, which is obvious, is public speaking, but there are mechanics.
Oh yeah.
You know, there are tricks to learn with how you modulate your voice and when you take a pause, when you lower your voice, you know, like when you slow down, like that's an
Body
amazing
language.
skill. Yeah, body language, like all that can come from public speaking. I mean, these are like the really, I would say, like the big ones.
I think in US colleges they teach you to walk backwards while talking to your guest. So do you suggest to learn something like this?
See, but those are the things that, like, I don't know, I feel like I would love to have, you know, in this forum I want to build for global guidelines, like questions exactly like that. Like, how did you learn to walk backwards?
Yeah.
You know, because it's all those things you don't think about.
Yeah, I mean, I
Like
want to learn that. I want to
yeah,
learn
exactly.
that.
And like I guess you could practice that theoretically, and maybe that would make your life,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So great, great. So we would like to conclude now. Thank you so much for your time. You gave really amazing insights about your life and then tourism and then future. So I'm very thankful to you for giving me your time, and I'm
Yeah,
hopeful
thank
we'll
you for
connect
your
again.
time.
Yeah.
Such a
So if
wonderful
somebody wants,
conversation.
somebody wants to connect with you for Guide Alliance, how can they support you?
So you can go to globalguidealliance.com. It's the website, and it's the same on every
Okay.
social media handle. So on Instagram, Global Guide Alliance. And you can
Okay.
find me on LinkedIn. I'm still all over LinkedIn. That's a quarantine habit
Yeah.
that's here to
Same
stay.
with me.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna share the link for your Guide
Thank
Alliance and
you.
your LinkedIn profile in the
Thank you.
bio.
Thank you.
So
Perfect.
thank you and namaste. Thank you for your time.
Namaste.